Ever wonder why you bought that $200 pair of shoes when you swore you'd stick to your budget? According to research, 90% of our purchases are driven by emotions, not logic. In today's video, I'm breaking down exactly how your feelings hijack your wallet and why that planner you impulse bought, like Rachel's $300 splurge, isn't actually your fault. Your brain is literally working against you, but I've got the strategies to fix it. Why your brain is working against your budget. Did you know your brain has two different systems for making decisions? And one of them is sabotaging your finances right now. Your brain isn't actually designed to make smart financial choices in our modern world. And it's not your fault. According to Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman, we all have two distinct systems working in our brains when we make decisions. System 1 is your brain's autopilot. It's lightning fast, emotional, and operates below your conscious awareness. This is the system that instinctively pulls your hand away from a hot stove or makes you smile when you see a puppy. But here's the problem. System 1 also drives most of your purchasing decisions without you even realizing it. System 2, on the other hand, is your brain's logical processor. It's deliberate, analytical, and careful. Exactly what you'd want controlling your finances. But System 2 is lazy and energy intensive. It only kicks in when you force it to, like when you're comparing mortgage rates or calculating your retirement savings. Here's where things get interesting, and a little scary. Retailers and marketers know all about these two systems, and they've built entire business models around bypassing your logical System 2 and targeting your emotional System 1. Those limited time offers, the flash sales that create urgency, the strategically placed impulse items by the checkout, they're all designed to trigger System 1 before your rational brain can step in and say, wait, do I really need this? Think about the last time you walked into Target for just one thing and left with a cart full of items. That wasn't a coincidence. It was your System 1 responding to carefully engineered emotional triggers throughout the store. From the store layout to the music playing in the background, everything is crafted to keep your logical brain disengaged while your emotional brain fills your cart. What's even more concerning is that a shocking 76% of Americans report experiencing emotional distress triggered by financial pressures. And in our current economic climate, this emotional vulnerability is being exploited more than ever. With inflation hitting record levels and economic uncertainty looming, our emotional spending behaviors have intensified, especially among young adults. When prices rise and the future feels uncertain, our emotional brains kick into overdrive. We start to make financial decisions based on fear, anxiety, and the desire for security or comfort, rather than sound financial reasoning. This has given rise to a fascinating phenomenon called doom spending among Gen Z and millennials. Facing a future where traditional financial goals like homeownership seem increasingly out of reach, many young adults are responding with a might as well enjoy today mentality. They're splurging on experiences, luxury items, or small indulgences because their emotional brains are seeking comfort in an economically uncomfortable world. One recent survey found that 72% of millennials have made impulse purchases specifically to cope with stress or anxiety about the current economy. This isn't about poor self-control. It's about how our brains naturally respond to perceived threats and uncertainty by seeking immediate comfort. You might be thinking, I'm pretty logical about my spending, but research suggests otherwise. Brain imaging studies show that when we're making purchasing decisions, the emotional centers of our brain activate first, and often, our logical centers never fully engage at all. One famous study had participants make purchasing decisions while in an fMRI machine, and found that the nucleus accumbens, the brain's pleasure center, lit up before the prefrontal cortex, our logical brain, even got involved. So what does this mean for your budget? Well, it means you're fighting an uphill battle if you're only focusing on traditional budgeting methods without addressing the emotional drivers behind your spending. You can create the perfect spreadsheet, but if you don't understand how your brain actually makes decisions, that spreadsheet might as well be digital wallpaper. The brain science becomes even more interesting when we look at marketing tactics. Studies show that emotionally engaging advertisements are remembered 100% more than rational ones. That's why car commercials rarely talk about fuel efficiency until the final few seconds. They're busy showing you images designed to trigger emotional associations with freedom, status, adventure, or family security. Even the digital world is designed to exploit this brain chemistry. Those countdown timers on websites, the only two left in stock warnings, they're all triggering a primitive fear response in your System 1 brain. The fear of missing out, FOMO, which can override your rational System 2 brain's objections about whether you actually need the item. And here's where it gets really interesting. Your emotional brain's decision-making process happens in milliseconds, while your logical brain takes seconds or even minutes to catch up. That tiny gap is where retailers make billions of dollars in profit. Social media has amplified this effect tremendously. When you see someone enjoying a luxury vacation or showing off a new purchase, your emotional brain doesn't distinguish between their reality and yours. It simply registers, I want that feeling too, and suddenly you're browsing travel sites or shopping for similar items. Here's the big question. Is it really true that 90% of your purchases are driven by emotions rather than logic? According to consumer psychology research, yes. Across multiple studies, researchers have consistently found that the overwhelming majority of purchasing decisions are primarily emotional, with logical reasoning often serving as mere post-purchase justification. Understanding this brain science isn't just interesting, it's the first step to taking back control. When you recognize that your brain is working against your budget, you can start developing strategies to engage your System 2 thinking before your System 1 has a chance to empty your wallet. The fear-based spending trap. Now that you understand the battle between your two brain systems, let's expose one of the most powerful weapons retailers use against your wallet: fear. That racing heartbeat when you see only 3 items left in stock isn't random anxiety. It's your primitive brain responding to a deliberately engineered threat signal designed to make you spend money before your rational mind can object. Fear-based spending is one of the most effective triggers marketers use to separate you from your money. When that limited time offer appears, your brain isn't calmly assessing if you need the product. It's frantically trying to avoid missing out. This fear comes in 3 distinct flavors: FOMO, fear of missing out, fear of scarcity, and fear of future regret. FOMO hits when your friend shows off their new gadget or you see someone living their best vacation life on Instagram. Suddenly, you're not just seeing a product, you're seeing a potential loss of experience, status, or opportunity. Research by the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that FOMO can increase spending by up to 56% in certain product categories. Scarcity fear is even more primal. Those limited edition sneakers or while supplies last promotions, they're deliberately designed to trigger the same brain response as food scarcity did for our ancestors. When Target puts only 2 left at this price under a listing, they're tapping directly into your survival instincts. But perhaps the most insidious is the fear of future regret. You'll kick yourself later if you don't buy this now. This psychological trigger plays on our tendency to feel losses more intensely than gains, a phenomenon psychologists call loss aversion. Studies show we feel the pain of losing $100 about twice as strongly as the pleasure of gaining $100. Retailers don't just understand these fears, they manufacture them. That countdown timer on flash sale websites? It's creating artificial urgency. Those trending now labels, they're building social proof to amplify your FOMO. Even the layout of stores is designed to create a sense of scarcity, with limited displays suggesting items might run out. The current economic landscape has turned up the volume on these fear triggers to 11. With inflation at record highs and economic uncertainty looming, retailers know your anxiety about future prices and availability is already elevated. This explains why panic buying has become so common during economic shifts. Remember the great toilet paper shortage of 2020? That wasn't just about hygiene, it was fear-based spending in action. More recently, economists have noticed similar patterns with everything from gas to groceries as prices climb. When we're uncertain about the future, we're more susceptible to scarcity messaging. The financial consequences of fear-based spending can be devastating. A 2022 survey found that 64% of Americans who identified as emotional spenders pointed to fear-based purchases as their biggest source of financial regret. On average, these regretted purchases cost $430 per person annually, money that could have gone toward actual financial security. This type of spending creates a particularly vicious cycle. You make an impulsive purchase out of fear, feel guilty about it afterward, experience financial stress from the unnecessary expense, and then become even more vulnerable to fear-based marketing as your overall anxiety increases. What makes fear-based spending especially troubling is how it can be rooted in childhood experiences. If you grew up in a household where money was tight, where "we can't afford that" was a common phrase, or where financial insecurity was the norm, your brain may have formed powerful connections between having things and feeling safe. This conditioning can manifest decades later when you feel an overwhelming need to stock up during sales or buy things just in case. It's not logical. It's an emotional response to triggers that remind your brain of past scarcity. But here's the good news. Once you recognize these fear-based triggers, you can spot them before they empty your wallet. Your body actually sends you clear warning signals when you're making a fear-based purchase, rather than a reasoned one. Listen for phrases like, "I better buy this now or I'll miss out," or "if I don't get this today, I'll regret it later," playing in your head. These are classic fear-based spending thoughts. Pay attention to physical symptoms too. A racing heart, quick shallow breathing, or a feeling of urgency are your body's way of telling you you're in a fear response, not a rational decision-making mode. Next time you're shopping and feel a sudden urge to buy something immediately, pause and ask yourself, would I still want this if there were unlimited quantity available forever? If the answer is no, you're likely responding to artificially created scarcity, not the actual value of the item. Another telltale sign of fear-based spending is the relief you feel after making the purchase. If buying something feels like you've escaped a threat rather than gained something valuable, that's your brain responding to fear, not desire. The most powerful fear triggers often combine multiple threats. Last chance, 70% off these highly rated items, only 5 left in stock, hits you with scarcity, social proof, and financial loss all at once. Marketers know that stacking these triggers makes them nearly irresistible to your emotional brain. In fact, Amazon and other major retailers have elevated this to an exact science. Their algorithms track which fear messages generate the most purchases and then refine them for maximum impact. Those messages aren't random. They're precision-engineered to bypass your logical mind. One especially effective tactic is the abandoned cart email that reminds you your items are selling fast. This combines personalization, they know exactly what you want, with scarcity, to create a potent fear cocktail that can increase conversion rates by up to 69%, according to marketing research. The happiness and validation spending cycle. Those fear tactics retailers use are just the beginning of their emotional manipulation playbook. But what happens when we voluntarily empty our wallets chasing happiness instead of fleeing fear? That retail therapy session you swear makes you feel better is actually triggering a brain reaction surprisingly similar to addictive substances. And the crash comes just as quickly. When you click buy now on that new phone, designer bag, or even something as simple as a cute coffee mug, your brain's reward system kicks into overdrive. Your nucleus accumbens, the same pleasure center that responds to food, sex, and drugs, gets flooded with dopamine. This neurochemical creates that familiar shopping high that keeps you coming back for more. But here's the kicker. Studies from the Journal of Consumer Psychology show that this purchase-induced happiness fades in as little as 20 minutes. That $200 splurge delivers a dopamine burst that disappears faster than a Netflix episode. And yet, we keep chasing that next hit, creating what researchers call a hedonic treadmill, a never-ending pursuit of the next purchase that might finally deliver lasting happiness. This creates a dangerous cycle. Each time you shop for that happiness boost, your brain requires more stimulation to achieve the same feeling. What started as excitement over a $50 purchase eventually requires $100, then $200 to generate the same emotional response. This is remarkably similar to how tolerance develops with addictive substances. You need increasingly larger doses to feel the same effect. Social media has supercharged this validation spending cycle to unprecedented levels. When you scroll through Instagram and see someone flaunting their new Peloton bike or vacation in Bali, your brain doesn't just register the image. It creates a direct connection between those possessions and perceived happiness. A 2023 study from the Journal of Social Psychology found that just 15 minutes of social media scrolling increases purchase intent by 37% among young adults. The connection between spending and self-validation runs surprisingly deep. According to consumer psychologist Kit Yarrow, people aren't just buying products, they're buying better versions of themselves. This explains why an astonishing 58% of consumers report willingness to pay premium prices for brands that create positive emotional experiences. We're not just buying things, we're purchasing identities and feelings. This behavior often traces back to childhood. Did your parents give you gifts as rewards for good behavior or achievements? Were shopping trips used as bonding activities or expressions of love? These early experiences create powerful neural connections between purchases and emotional validation that can last a lifetime. Children who regularly received gifts as expressions of love often grow into adults who use shopping as a way to self-soothe or feel worthy. The concept of aspirational spending takes this even further. When you buy that luxury watch you can't really afford, or the high-end kitchen gadget when you rarely cook, you're purchasing the identity you aspire to have, not the one you currently live. You're buying the lifestyle of the person you wish to become, successful, organized, fashionable, rather than purchasing based on your actual needs. Marketing experts have mastered the art of selling this aspirational identity. They don't just advertise products, they sell the promise of transformation. You're not just buying running shoes, they suggest. You're buying the identity of someone who prioritizes fitness. This creates a powerful emotional hook that bypasses logical decision-making entirely. Research from Harvard Business School reveals how deep this connection runs. When consumers were asked to describe recent significant purchases, 73% focused primarily on how the purchase would transform their identity or social standing, rather than the product's functional benefits. That $300 stand mixer isn't just for baking, it's about becoming the type of person who hosts perfect dinner parties. The financial consequences of this validation spending cycle can be devastating. A 2022 survey from the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority found that Americans who strongly associated purchases with self-worth carried an average of $7,500 more in credit card debt than those who didn't. That's thousands of dollars in interest payments for temporary emotional boosts that fade almost immediately. What makes this cycle particularly dangerous is that, unlike fear-based spending, which often triggers immediate regret, happiness-seeking purchases actually do provide that short-term dopamine hit. This positive reinforcement makes the behavior much harder to recognize as problematic. Your brain literally rewards you for making these purchases, even as they damage your long-term financial health. But there is hope for breaking this cycle. The first step is asking yourself a series of targeted questions before making non-essential purchases. Are you buying this item for its function or for how it makes you feel about yourself? Would you still want this if no one else knew you owned it? Is there a non-purchase way to achieve the emotional state you're seeking? Will this purchase still matter to you 1 month from now? These questions create the critical pause that allows your rational brain to catch up with your emotional impulses. They create space between the dopamine craving and the purchase decision. And surprisingly, understanding the temporary nature of purchase-based happiness can actually lead to more genuine fulfillment. Research from San Francisco State University found that people who redirected their spending from material items to experiences reported significantly higher overall life satisfaction. The happiness from experiences, like a cooking class or hiking trip, lasts much longer than material purchases, because experiences become part of your identity in a way that possessions rarely do. What's fascinating is the connection between happiness and validation spending. When we make purchases that reflect our desired identity, Whether it's eco-friendly products to feel environmentally conscious or luxury items to feel successful, our brains reward us with a dopamine hit that feels meaningful. But this creates a diminishing return cycle that requires ever more spending to maintain the same emotional boost. Each purchase raises the bar for what's needed to trigger that same feeling next time. Stress and anxiety, your budget's biggest enemies. Beyond that dopamine hit from validation spending lies an even more powerful emotional spending trigger: stress and anxiety. When life gets overwhelming, your brain basically throws a financial fire sale where logic gets marked down to zero and impulse buys are suddenly buy one get 10 free. And retailers aren't just aware of this phenomenon, they've built entire business models around it. Think about the last time you had a truly rough day. Maybe your boss criticized your work, you argued with your partner, or you just felt overwhelmed by your to-do list. What did you do next? For millions of Americans, the answer involves clicking Add to Cart, or making an impromptu trip to Target for that one thing that somehow turns into a cart full of stuff. This isn't random behavior. It's your brain's predictable neurological response to stress. When you're anxious or overwhelmed, your prefrontal cortex, the rational decision-making part of your brain, essentially goes offline. Meanwhile, the more primitive parts of your brain take over, seeking immediate relief from uncomfortable feelings. The result? That $200 impulse purchase that made perfect sense in the moment, but leaves you wondering, what was I thinking the next day? What makes stress spending particularly dangerous is how it creates a vicious cycle that's hard to escape. You feel financial pressure, which creates stress, which triggers impulsive spending, which creates more financial pressure, and around you go on this never-ending carousel of retail therapy and regret. The numbers tell a compelling story about this phenomenon. A recent survey by the American Psychological Association found that 59% of Gen X and a whopping 68% of millennials report experiencing high levels of financial anxiety that directly impacts their spending decisions. When you're worried about money, you're actually more likely to make poor financial choices. It's a cruel irony of how our brains work. The pandemic supercharged this effect for many people. In a fascinating study conducted by Northwestern Mutual in 2022, researchers found that 43% of Americans developed new spending habits during pandemic isolation periods, with comfort purchases leading the list. The most interesting part, even as life returned to normal, these stress spending patterns persisted. We effectively rewired our brains to associate online shopping with emotional relief during those high-stress lockdown periods. This brings us to the concept of escape spending, using purchases as a temporary escape hatch from overwhelming emotions or situations. Dr. Brad Klontz, a financial psychologist, explains it this way. Shopping provides a perfect temporary escape from worry, sadness, or boredom. It gives you something else to focus on, creates a sense of control when other aspects of life feel chaotic, and provides that brief dopamine rush that masks unpleasant feelings. Not everyone responds to stress in the same way financially. Research from the Financial Therapy Association identifies distinct personality-based responses to financial stress. Security-focused individuals often respond to stress by withdrawing, hoarding cash, and avoiding purchases altogether. In contrast, sensation-seeking personalities do the opposite. They're more likely to engage in splurge spending when stressed, seeking the high that comes from new purchases. Social stress amplifies this effect even further. When faced with social anxiety or feelings of inadequacy, many people engage in what psychologists call compensatory consumption, buying products that symbolically address perceived deficiencies. Feeling socially awkward? You might be more likely to buy a designer outfit that boosts your confidence. Feeling professionally insecure? That new laptop or certification course suddenly seems essential. The emotional relief from stress spending is both powerful and fleeting. According to a study published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology, the positive feelings from stress-based purchases typically last less than 48 hours, while the financial consequences can linger for months or even years. Yet we keep returning to this strategy because in the moment, it works. It genuinely does provide temporary emotional relief. What's particularly insidious about stress spending is how retailers have engineered their marketing to target you precisely when you're most vulnerable. Notice how shopping sites remember exactly what you browsed when you were feeling low and then bombard you with those items later? Or how coffee shops position their most indulgent treats right by the register when you're tired and your willpower is depleted? These aren't accidents. They're calculated strategies to capitalize on your stress response. Ever wonder why so many people shop late at night? A 2023 study from the University of Michigan found that online purchases peak between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m., times when people report the highest levels of daily stress accumulation and the lowest levels of self-control. Retailers know this, which is why flash sales and limited-time offers often appear during these vulnerable evening hours. Even your physical surroundings while shopping impact how susceptible you are to stress spending. Research from the Journal of Consumer Research found that crowded, noisy, or chaotic shopping environments actually increase stress levels, which in turn increases impulsive spending by up to 17%. This explains why so many people walk into a crowded mall intending to buy one specific item and leave with bags full of unplanned purchases. The good news is that understanding these neurological responses gives you the power to interrupt them. Just recognizing that your sudden urge to shop might be your brain's clumsy attempt to manage stress is the first step toward developing healthier responses. But beyond awareness, there are specific techniques that can provide the same stress relief without the financial damage. The most effective alternatives target the same neurological pathways that shopping activates. Exercise, for example, provides a similar dopamine response to shopping, but with positive rather than negative long-term effects. Creative activities engage the focusing aspects of shopping without the cost. And mindfulness practices can directly address the underlying stress rather than just masking it temporarily. So why do we use shopping as a stress relief mechanism in the first place? Shopping activates multiple reward pathways in the brain simultaneously. It provides distraction from troubles, a sense of control in choosing and acquiring items, the anticipation of ownership, and that dopamine rush of the purchase itself. It's essentially a perfect neurological storm that temporarily overrides stress signals. The problem is that, like many quick fixes, it creates your childhood money stories are still controlling your wallet. Those shopping patterns didn't just appear in your adult life. They were programmed into your brain since childhood. That financial anxiety you feel when you see a sale? It might actually be your 8-year-old self reacting to how your parents handled money during your formative years. Your most powerful financial beliefs were locked in before you even understood what a credit card was. The truth is, we're all walking around with what financial psychologists call money scripts. Unconscious beliefs about finances that were written during our childhood and now direct our adult spending behaviors, like invisible puppet strings. These aren't just casual opinions. They're deeply embedded neural pathways that automatically trigger specific emotional and behavioral responses whenever money enters the equation. Dr. Brad Klontz, financial psychologist and founder of the Financial Psychology Institute, found that these money scripts are usually formed between ages 5 to 10 during what he calls our financial flashpoint experiences. These are emotionally charged childhood memories involving money that created lasting imprints on our developing brains. Think about it. What messages did you receive about money growing up? Was money openly discussed in your home, or was it a taboo subject wrapped in secrecy and tension? Did your parents fight about finances, or did they model confident money management? The answers to these questions shape the financial operating system running in your brain right now. Research from the Journal of Financial Therapy reveals that these childhood money lessons fall into 4 main categories of money scripts: money avoidance, money worship, money status, and money vigilance. Each creates distinct adult spending patterns that can either help or harm your financial health. If you grew up hearing phrases like "money is the root of all evil," or "rich people are greedy," you might have developed a money avoidance script. These beliefs often lead to subconscious self-sabotage, like ignoring bills, under-earning despite your potential, or even giving money away when you can't afford to. all because deep down you believe money is somehow bad or that you don't deserve it. On the flip side, if your childhood taught you that more money would solve all our problems, or we just can't afford that, you likely developed a money worship script. This manifests as persistent feelings that you never have enough, regardless of your actual bank balance. People with this script often struggle with compulsive spending, workaholism, or taking financial risks, constantly chasing an elusive sense of enough. The money status script forms when children learn that self-worth and net worth are the same thing. If your parents consistently linked success to material possessions or social standing, you might now find yourself prioritizing appearances over actual financial security. This explains why some people with modest incomes drive luxury cars they can't afford. They're fulfilling a childhood script that equates visible wealth with personal value. The money vigilance script comes from households that emphasized saving, frugality, and discretion about financial matters. While this can lead to positive habits like emergency funds and careful spending, extreme vigilance might manifest as excessive anxiety about money, inability to enjoy what you have, or even hoarding resources beyond what's reasonable. These scripts are particularly powerful because they operate below conscious awareness. You don't wake up thinking, today I'll overspend because my childhood taught me money equals love. Instead, you simply feel an irresistible pull towards certain financial behaviors without understanding why. Economic conditions during your formative years also stamp your financial psychology with generational patterns. A fascinating study from Northwestern University found that people who grew up during recessions tend to believe more strongly in luck determining financial success and are less likely to take financial risks, even decades later during prosperous times. This explains why your Depression-era grandparents might have seemed cheap despite having substantial savings. Their childhood during extreme economic hardship created lasting money scripts about scarcity that never went away, even when their financial reality improved dramatically. Even more interesting is how these scripts get passed down through families like financial DNA. When children observe their parents' money behaviors and emotional reactions to financial situations, they absorb these patterns through a process psychologists call financial socialization. This creates intergenerational money scripts that can persist for decades, explaining why financial patterns like overspending, under-earning, or extreme frugality often run in families. A particularly striking example comes from research by the Financial Therapy Association, which found that individuals whose parents regularly used phrases like, "we can't afford that," even when they actually could, often develop adult spending patterns dominated by either extreme frugality or rebellious overspending. The emotional charge behind those childhood denials created powerful scripts that continue directing spending decades later. The money equals love script is especially common and damaging. Children who received gifts as the primary expression of affection often develop adult spending habits where they use purchases to create or repair emotional connections. This explains why some people compulsively buy gifts they can't afford or feel uncomfortable receiving without giving something of equal or greater value in return. Another common script is the money secrecy pattern. In households where finances were treated as private or shameful, children often develop avoidance behaviors around money management. As adults, they might ignore bank statements, avoid financial conversations with partners, or procrastinate on important financial decisions, all because their childhood money script equates financial matters with discomfort or conflict. The parental money dynamics you witnessed also shaped your adult financial relationships. Research from the University of Cambridge found that children who observed healthy financial communication between parents were more likely to have collaborative money relationships as adults. Meanwhile, those who witnessed financial power struggles often recreate similar patterns in their own relationships. What makes these childhood money scripts so resistant to change is that they operate through emotional pathways rather than logical ones. Your rational adult brain might know that buying expensive gifts you can't afford is financially unwise, but if your emotional brain equates spending with love, logic rarely wins that battle. The good news is that once you identify your money scripts, you can begin rewriting them. Financial therapist Amanda Clayman explains, it's like becoming aware of an accent you didn't know you had. Once you hear it, you can begin making conscious choices about whether to maintain it or adopt new patterns. The first step is recognizing your money script in action. When you feel a strong emotional pull toward a financial decision, pause and ask yourself, is this adult me deciding, or is this my childhood money script running on autopilot? This awareness alone can create the mental space needed to make more conscious choices. Look for patterns in your financial reactions. Do you feel anxious when you have extra money, subconsciously creating situations to get rid of it? Do you avoid looking at your bank account? Do you feel compelled to match or exceed others' spending? These reactions often point directly to childhood money scripts at work. Perhaps most important is connecting your current financial behaviors to specific childhood memories or messages. When you find yourself making an emotional spending decision, try asking, where did I learn this? What childhood experiences might be influencing this choice? The answers may surprise you, revealing connections between present behaviors and past experiences you never realized were related. Emotional intelligence, your secret weapon against impulse spending. Understanding your childhood money scripts is just the first step. But how do you actually stop them from controlling your wallet? While most financial advice focuses on budgeting apps and saving strategies, they completely miss the emotional intelligence factor that determines whether you'll succeed or sabotage yourself. Those financial self-help books on your shelf might teach you how to create the perfect spreadsheet, but they rarely address the real reason budgets fail: your emotions. Think about it. Have you ever created the perfect budget only to abandon it a few weeks later? That's not because you lack discipline or financial knowledge. It's because traditional financial advice treats the symptoms, your spending, rather than the cause, your emotions. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is your hidden superpower when it comes to financial success. It's the ability to recognize, understand, and effectively manage your emotions, specifically in financial contexts. Research from the Journal of Financial Therapy shows that individuals with higher emotional intelligence scores maintain significantly lower debt-to-income ratios and report greater overall financial satisfaction, regardless of their income level. But what exactly is emotional intelligence when it comes to money? It breaks down into 4 key components that work together to transform your financial life. First is financial self-awareness, recognizing your emotional triggers around money in real time. Second comes self-management, implementing strategies to regulate those emotions before making financial decisions. Third is social awareness, understanding how others' emotions and social pressures influence your spending. And finally, relationship management, navigating financial discussions and decisions with partners, family, or friends without letting emotions derail progress. Let's look at a real example. Rachel, one of my viewers, shared how she'd repeatedly blow her budget despite having strong financial knowledge. Through developing her financial EQ, she discovered that feelings of professional inadequacy were triggering her $300 planner purchase. Once she recognized this pattern, she could address both the emotion, professional insecurity, and the spending behavior, impulse buying expensive productivity tools. A groundbreaking study published in the Journal of Economic Psychology found that participants who scored in the top quartile for emotional intelligence accumulated an average of 42% more wealth over a 10-year period compared to those in the bottom quartile, even when controlling for income, education, and starting financial position. This wasn't because they earned more money. It was because they made emotionally intelligent financial decisions consistently over time. What's particularly fascinating is how emotional intelligence affects materialism levels. Research from the University of Michigan shows that people with higher emotional intelligence scores demonstrate significantly lower materialistic tendencies. They derive satisfaction from experiences and relationships rather than possessions, naturally reducing their impulse spending without feeling deprived. One of the most powerful components of financial emotional intelligence is emotional regulation, the ability to manage your emotional responses in financial situations. When you feel the urge to make an emotional purchase, emotional regulation gives you the mental space to pause, reflect, and choose a response rather than react impulsively. Dr. Mary Gresham, a financial psychologist, explains that emotional regulation works like a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger it becomes. She describes it as creating a gap between stimulus and response in financial decisions. That gap is where your financial freedom lives. So how do you actually develop this financial emotional intelligence? The first step is remarkably simple but powerful. Start keeping a feelings and finances journal. After each purchase above $20, take 30 seconds to record 3 things. 1. How you felt before the purchase. 2. How you felt during the purchase. And 3. How you felt 2 to 3 hours after the purchase. This simple practice creates awareness of your emotional spending patterns. You might discover that boredom triggers your Amazon browsing, or that work stress consistently leads to food delivery splurges. One study from Northwestern University found that participants who maintained a financial emotions journal for just 3 weeks reduced impulsive spending by an average of 23%. Beyond journaling, developing an emotional vocabulary around money is crucial. Most of us have never learned to articulate our financial feelings beyond stressed or worried. Research from Yale University suggests that the more precisely you can name your emotions, the better you can manage them. Try expanding your financial emotional vocabulary to include feelings like financially vulnerable, monetarily constrained, or fiscally empowered. Another powerful technique is the emotional temperature check before significant purchases. Before buying something, especially online, pause and rate your emotional state on a scale of 1-10, with 10 being extremely emotional. If you're above a 7, implement a mandatory 24-hour cooling-off period before completing the purchase. This simple technique has been shown to reduce regretted purchases by up to 64%. The real magic happens when you begin connecting specific emotions to specific spending behaviors. Dr. Brad Klontz found that different emotional states trigger distinct spending patterns. Anxiety might lead to security purchases, like unnecessary insurance or warranties, while sadness often triggers identity-reinforcing purchases, like status items or self-improvement products. Financial therapist Lindsay Bryan Podvin recommends creating an emotional spending profile by categorizing your last 20 impulse purchases by the emotion that triggered them. This creates a personalized map of your financial vulnerability points, allowing you to develop targeted strategies for each emotional trigger. What makes emotional intelligence so powerful compared to traditional budgeting approaches is that it works with your brain rather than against it. Instead of fighting your emotional nature, you harness it. As behavioral economist Dan Ariely puts it, the best financial strategies don't require constant willpower. They require understanding how your mind works and creating systems that align with that reality. The payoff for developing financial emotional intelligence extends far beyond your bank account. Research shows it reduces financial anxiety, improves relationship satisfaction, financial disagreements being the #1 predictor of divorce, and even correlates with better physical health outcomes by reducing stress-related spending and financial worry. To start building your financial emotional intelligence today, begin with self-awareness. For the next week, before each purchase, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What triggered this feeling? Am I buying this item as a solution to an emotional need? This simple practice activates your brain's prefrontal cortex, bringing emotional spending patterns into conscious awareness where they can be addressed. Practical techniques to master fear-based spending. Self-awareness might be getting you halfway there, but let's be real. When that only 2 items left notification pops up, your logical brain often takes a back seat to your fear response. What if I told you there's a ridiculously simple technique that's helped my viewers save thousands by neutralizing the most powerful emotional spending trigger of all? It's time to tackle fear-based spending head-on with practical strategies you can implement today. When fear kicks in while shopping, traditional budget advice like just stick to your list feels about as helpful as bringing a water gun to a forest fire. In those moments, fear hijacks your brain's operating system, Your heart races, your palms get sweaty, and suddenly that limited edition whatever feels absolutely essential to your survival. That's why we need targeted techniques specifically designed to counter these primal responses. The most powerful weapon in your arsenal against fear-based spending is the 24-hour rule. Here's how it works. Whenever you feel that urgent need to buy something that isn't an absolute necessity, simply walk away and wait a full 24 hours before making the purchase. This isn't about denying yourself, it's about creating space between the emotional trigger and your action. During those 24 hours, the fear response naturally subsides, allowing your analytical thinking to return. One viewer, Michael, told me he saved over $2,800 in just 3 months using this technique on tech purchases that seemed unmissable in the moment. But what about online shopping where those cart timers are ticking down? For digital purchases, create a cooling off folder on your computer. Take a screenshot of the item, save it to your folder, then close the browser tab. You'd be amazed how many urgent deals magically reappear a week later, or how your desire for the item completely vanishes during the waiting period. The next powerful technique addresses catastrophic thinking, which fuels panic purchases. I call it the realistic worst-case scenario exercise. When you feel that urgent need to buy something out of fear, pause and ask yourself, what's the actual worst thing that could happen if I don't buy this right now? Then rate that outcome on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being truly catastrophic. Most fear-based purchases rank shockingly low when examined this way. That last chance furniture sale? Maybe you'd pay 5% more next month. Annoying, but hardly life-altering. This process of decatastrophizing dismantles the exaggerated threats your fear brain creates. You're not just challenging the purchase, you're challenging the distorted thinking behind it. When you realize the emergency is mostly manufactured, the urgency dissolves. For those moments when fear has already activated your body's stress response, tactical breathing can be your immediate intervention. The 4-7-8 technique works wonders. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and exhale for 8 seconds. Repeat this 4 times. This pattern activates your parasympathetic nervous system, countering the fight or flight response that retailers deliberately trigger with their urgency marketing. The physical symptoms of fear, racing heart, shallow breathing, often precede conscious awareness of the emotion itself. By addressing these physical manifestations first, you regain control over your body's response system before making a financial decision. I personally use this technique in crowded sales environments where competitive shopping energy can be particularly contagious. Another powerful strategy is creating a fear-based spending firewall by identifying your specific fear triggers. Do limited time offers get you every time? Are you susceptible to "if you don't buy now, someone else will" messaging? Once you've pinpointed your particular vulnerability, you can set up personalized defenses. For example, if scarcity marketing is your weakness, create a scarcity marketing bingo card with phrases like "while supplies last," "limited edition," and "final clearance." When shopping, mentally check off these phrases as you encounter them. This simple awareness exercise transforms manipulative marketing from a trigger into a predictable game, neutralizing its emotional impact. Building a proper emergency fund is another crucial defense against fear-based spending. Many panic purchases stem from generalized financial anxiety that gets channeled into specific fear triggers. When you have 3 to 6 months of expenses safely tucked away, those last chance sales lose their emotional grip because your brain no longer operates from a position of scarcity. Start small if necessary. Even $500 set aside can begin shifting your psychological relationship with financial emergencies. Research shows that people with emergency funds are 60% less likely to make panic purchases during economic downturns. The security of having this financial buffer creates emotional resilience against fear-based marketing. For those struggling with deeper scarcity mindsets, try the abundance visualization technique. Before shopping, take 2 minutes to visualize yourself with abundant resources and options. Imagine multiple pathways to acquire what you need, not just the immediate option in front of you. This mental reframing helps counteract the artificial scarcity that retailers create with their now or never messaging. Let's talk implementation strategy. Don't try adopting all these techniques at once. Start with the one that addresses your most frequent fear trigger. Practice it consistently for 2 weeks before adding another. Most viewers report that mastering just one technique significantly reduces their impulse purchases. The key to success is preparation. Fear-based spending happens in moments when your emotional brain overrides your logical one, so having pre-established protocols is essential. Create reminder cards for your wallet with your chosen techniques written down, or set up phone alerts with your personalized anti-fear strategies. For online shopping, technology can help enforce your cooling off period. Browser extensions like Icebox replace the Buy Now button with a Put It on Ice option that enforces your waiting period. For Amazon shoppers, the Amazon Assistant extension can track price histories, showing you that most limited-time deals actually repeat regularly, perfect for dismantling false urgency. The power of these techniques compounds over time. As you consistently interrupt the fear spending cycle, you're literally rewiring your neural pathways. What initially requires conscious effort gradually becomes your default response pattern. Jessica, another viewer, told me that after 3 months of practicing the 24-hour rule, she naturally started questioning urgency marketing without even trying. For persistent fear triggers that seem resistant to these techniques, consider the root cause analysis. Ask yourself, what specific security need am I trying to meet with this purchase? Often, fear-based spending stems from deeper insecurities that shopping temporarily soothes but never resolves. Identifying these underlying needs allows you to address them directly rather than through consumption. The financial impact of mastering fear-based spending can be substantial. Viewers who consistently apply these techniques report average savings of $2,400 to $3,600 annually, money that can be redirected toward genuine financial security rather than temporary fear relief. The emotional benefits are equally significant. Reduced shopping anxiety, more mindful
breaking the
consumption,
validation spending
and a
cycle
greater
for
sense
good.
of control over your financial
Those savings
life. From conquering fear-based spending are impressive, but there's another emotional money leak that might be costing you even more. When was the last time you bought something not because you needed it, but because of how it made you feel about yourself? That designer bag, the latest tech gadget, or the luxury car, purchases that often leave you feeling emptier than your wallet. Let's explore a powerful values alignment technique that finally breaks this expensive cycle. Validation spending hits differently than fear-based purchasing. Instead of the urgent buy now before it's gone panic, validation spending whispers, buy this and you'll finally be enough. It's that nagging feeling that your worth is somehow tied to what you own or wear. This type of spending isn't just affecting your bank account. A recent survey found that people who frequently make validation purchases report lower life satisfaction despite owning more things. The social pressure behind validation spending is intense, especially in our hyper-connected world. Every time you open Instagram or TikTok, you're bombarded with perfectly curated lifestyles that subtly suggest you need certain products to be happy, successful, or accepted. This creates a psychological tension between who you are and who you think you should be, a gap many of us try to close with our credit cards. This is where the values alignment check comes in, a game-changing technique that transformed my own relationship with spending. Before any non-essential purchase over $50, I ask myself 3 simple questions. Does this purchase align with who I truly am? Am I buying this to impress others or to satisfy myself? And most importantly, will this purchase move me closer to or further from my core values? Here's how to create your own values alignment checklist. First, take 15 minutes to write down your 5 most important personal values. Maybe it's family, freedom, creativity, health, or community connection. Next, create a simple rating system. Strongly aligns, somewhat aligns, or doesn't align with each value. Before making a purchase, run it through this checklist. You'll be shocked at how many potential purchases fail this simple test. One viewer, Samantha, saved over $4,200 in 6 months using this technique. I realized I was about to spend $300 on designer shoes that didn't align with any of my actual values. They were purely for impressing colleagues I don't even like. The values check stopped me cold. Another powerful tool is the happiness inventory exercise. Take a blank sheet of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left side, list the last 5 purchases that brought you genuine, lasting happiness. On the right, list 5 non-purchase experiences that made you truly happy. Most people discover that their most meaningful happiness comes from experiences, relationships, and achievements, not things. This exercise reveals the truth about validation purchases. They provide a quick hit of satisfaction that fades remarkably fast. By consciously recognizing your authentic sources of happiness, you create a powerful reference point when tempted by validation spending. Ask yourself, will this purchase provide the same lasting happiness as the items and experiences on my happiness inventory? Identity-based budgeting takes these concepts even further. Traditional budgeting focuses on limiting spending categories, but identity-based budgeting aligns your spending with your authentic self. Start by asking, who am I at my core, and what kind of life do I genuinely want to live? Then allocate your money accordingly. For example, if being a lifelong learner is core to your identity, perhaps spending on books and courses aligns perfectly with your values, while spending on status symbols to impress others doesn't. If family connection matters most, maybe that vacation fund deserves more attention than upgrading your car to impress coworkers. This approach doesn't mean never treating yourself. It means ensuring those treats authentically serve your values rather than chasing external validation. As financial therapist Amanda Clayman puts it, true financial well-being comes when your spending patterns align with your personal values. Since social media significantly drives validation spending, creating healthier digital boundaries is essential. Try this 7-day social media detox challenge. For 1 week, delete shopping apps from your phone, unfollow or mute accounts that trigger comparison and desire, and replace scrolling time with activities from your happiness inventory. Many viewers report that just 1 week of this practice permanently changed their relationship with validation spending. Jordan, a regular viewer, shared, "After the social media detox, I realized I'd been buying workout clothes I didn't need just because fitness influencers made me feel inadequate. I saved $180 that month alone by breaking that pattern." Another powerful strategy tackles the belonging needs that drive many validation purchases. We often buy things to feel part of a group or community, whether it's the latest iPhone to fit in at work or brand name clothes to feel accepted socially. Yet research consistently shows that authentic connection satisfies this need far more effectively than purchases. Try the connection before consumption challenge. Before making a validation purchase, reach out to someone in your community. Call a friend, join a local group related to your interests, or volunteer for a cause you care about. This satisfies the belonging need that might be driving your urge to spend. These techniques work because they address the root emotional need behind validation spending rather than just telling you to stop spending. They acknowledge the very real human desire for recognition, belonging, and identity, and provide healthier ways to meet those needs. The most powerful aspect of breaking the validation spending cycle isn't just financial, it's psychological. As you align your spending with your authentic values, you'll experience greater congruence between who you are and how you live. This reduces the cognitive dissonance that drives so much unhappiness in our consumer culture. Many viewers report that the greatest benefit isn't even the money saved. It's the freedom from constantly chasing validation through purchases. As one viewer put it, "I finally stopped trying to impress people I don't even like with money I don't even have." The financial impact can be substantial too. Viewers who consistently practice these techniques report average savings of $3,200 to $4,800 annually, money that can be redirected toward experiences and purchases that genuinely align with their values and bring lasting satisfaction. Stress spending stoppers that actually work. That extra $4,800 in your account sounds amazing, but what happens when a terrible day at work has you reaching for your credit card like it's emotional first aid? The stress spending cycle might be the hardest financial habit to break, not because you lack willpower, but because your brain has been wired to seek this specific form of relief. Let me show you how to rewire that response with something that won't drain your bank account. When stress hits, the urge to spend money can feel almost impossible to resist. Your brain is literally crying out for dopamine, that feel-good chemical that shopping temporarily provides. But instead of fighting this natural response, what if you could redirect it? Enter the stress spending substitution technique. This approach acknowledges your brain's need for relief, but channels it toward activities that don't cost money. The key is identifying activities that trigger the same neurochemical response as shopping does. Physical movement tops the list of effective substitutions. A quick 5-minute dance party to your favorite song or 10 jumping jacks can instantly flood your system with endorphins. Research shows that even brief bursts of movement can significantly reduce cortisol, your stress hormone, while boosting those feel-good chemicals your brain is craving when it tells you to shop. Another powerful substitution is creative expression. Keep a sketch pad, journal, or even modeling clay nearby for those moments when stress peaks. Neuroscience research has found that creative activities activate the same reward pathways in the brain that light up during shopping, but with lasting benefits rather than fleeting relief. But here's the problem. When you're already stressed, your decision-making abilities are compromised. That's why waiting until you're in the middle of a stressful moment to figure out alternatives rarely works. This is where the emotional spending emergency kit comes in. Think of this as your financial first aid kit. Just like you wouldn't wait until you're bleeding to buy bandages, don't wait until you're stressed to create your relief plan. Your kit should contain physical items that provide immediate sensory comfort, perhaps a favorite tea, a scented candle, or a super soft blanket. But more importantly, it should include a personalized list of 5-minute activities that have worked for you in the past. Rachel, a viewer who implemented this technique, shared, "I keep my emergency kit list on my phone's lock screen. When I feel the urge to stress shop, I pick something from my list first. After doing this for a month, I realized I was saving around $200 that would have gone to random Amazon purchases." Another powerful approach is cognitive restructuring, challenging the automatic thoughts that connect spending with stress relief. When you catch yourself thinking, "I deserve this purchase after the day I've had," try consciously reframing it to, "I deserve to feel better without creating more financial stress for my future self." This mental shift might seem small, but it creates what psychologists call a pattern interrupt, a moment that breaks your automatic response cycle. Even a 3-second pause can be enough to move from emotional reactivity to thoughtful response. For immediate in-the-moment relief when stress shopping urges hit, try the 5-5-5 technique. This simple breathing exercise works because it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, essentially telling your body you're safe, you don't need to react right now. Here's how it works. Breathe in slowly for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, and exhale for 5 seconds. Repeat this 5 times. This 75-second investment can be enough to reduce the intensity of your stress response and allow your logical brain to regain control. Morgan, who used to spend an average of $120 weekly on stress purchases, incorporated this technique and reported, "Now when I feel stressed, I do the 5-5-5 breathing first. 9 times out of 10, the urgent need to buy something passes, and I can make a clearer decision. I've cut my stress spending by about 70%. Creating boundaries around your financial triggers is another crucial strategy. This means proactively removing pathways to stress spending before the urge hits. Some practical boundaries include unsubscribing from retail emails and text alerts that create artificial urgency. These messages are specifically designed to bypass your logical thinking and trigger emotional responses. Removing stored credit card information from your favorite shopping sites. The extra step of manually entering your card details provides another moment for reconsideration. Setting app time limits on shopping applications. Most smartphones now allow you to restrict how long you can use certain apps each day, creating no-spend zones in your home and schedule. This might mean designating your bedroom as a place where you never shop online, or establishing a rule against making purchases after 9 p.m., when willpower is typically lower. For Taylor, establishing these boundaries was transformative. I realized I was doing most of my stress shopping between 10 p.m. and midnight after difficult workdays. Setting my phone to block shopping apps after 9 p.m. saved me over $300 in the first month alone. The most successful stress spending stoppers combine multiple approaches. Consider creating a stress spending substitution list tailored to different emotional states. When you're angry, you might need a physical release like punching a pillow or going for a run. When you're sad, perhaps calling a friend or watching a favorite comedy clip works better. The key is understanding your personal stress patterns. Take a moment to think about your last 3 stress-induced purchases. What specific emotion were you feeling? What time of day was it? Where were you? Identifying these patterns allows you to develop targeted interventions that actually work for your unique triggers. One particularly effective approach combines physical activity with sensory engagement. If you're at work and can't start dancing around the office, try keeping a stress ball or fidget toy in your desk. The physical sensation provides immediate relief while giving your hands something to do besides reaching for your phone to shop. For home-based stress relief, consider creating a sensory reset station with items that engage all 5 senses. Something beautiful to look at, soothing music to listen to, a pleasant scent, a textured object to touch, and perhaps a piece of dark chocolate to taste. Total cost? Under $20, but it provides countless moments of relief that might otherwise trigger hundreds in impulse purchases. What makes these alternatives superior to shopping isn't just the financial benefit, it's that they actually work better at addressing the root cause of your stress. Shopping provides temporary distraction, but often adds financial worry later. These substitutions offer genuine relief without the financial hangover. Your financial future when you master emotional triggers. Those financial hangovers we've been talking about aren't just occasional headaches. They're silently reshaping your financial future every single day. But what if we flip the script? What if mastering just one emotional spending trigger could completely transform your money story over the next year? Let's do some real math here. The average emotional spender unconsciously allocates about $400 monthly toward unplanned purchases triggered by feelings. That's nearly $5,000 annually vanishing from your accounts. Now imagine redirecting just 20% of that emotional spending. We're talking about saving $1,000 in your first year by implementing the techniques we've discussed. But that's just the beginning. One of our viewers, Alicia, started with simply mastering her stress spending trigger. I used to order takeout and buy random stuff online whenever work got overwhelming, she told me. After 3 months of using the stress substitution techniques, I realized I'd saved over $1,400, enough to finally start my emergency fund. Another viewer, Marcus, focused solely on conquering his FOMO-based purchases. By practicing the 24-hour rule consistently for 6 months, he redirected nearly $2,200 toward paying off his highest interest credit card. These numbers might seem impressive, but they actually understate the true impact. When you master emotional triggers, you're not just saving money, you're breaking a costly cycle that compounds over time. Consider this. If you invest that redirected $1,000 from year 1 and continue the habit, assuming a modest 7% return, you'd have over $30,000 in 20 years without adding a single extra dollar. The financial transformation goes deeper than just savings. Remember Jordan, who implemented the social media detox? Beyond the immediate $180 monthly savings, she noticed something unexpected. My credit score jumped 43 points in just 4 months because I stopped making impulsive purchases on credit cards. This qualified me for a much better rate when refinancing my car loan, saving me thousands more. This creates what financial psychologists call the positive financial spiral. When you reduce emotional spending, you experience less financial stress, which leads to clearer decision-making, which creates more financial stability, which further reduces stress, and the upward cycle continues. Compare this to the negative spiral many people experience. Emotional spending creates financial pressure, which triggers more stress, which prompts more emotional spending as a coping mechanism. What's particularly powerful about mastering emotional triggers is how it transforms your relationship with money on a fundamental level. Financial therapist Amanda Clayman notes that people who develop awareness of their emotional spending patterns report significantly improved financial confidence within just 6 months. This confidence extends beyond spending habits to affect major life decisions like career moves, housing choices, and relationship dynamics. Consider Elena, who struggled with validation spending for years. After 6 months of practicing the values alignment technique, she built enough confidence to negotiate a $7,500 salary increase, something she'd been afraid to do previously. I realized I was using shopping to feel valued instead of recognizing my actual worth, she explained. Once I stopped trying to buy confidence, I found I actually had it all along. The benefits extend into relationships as well. Mark and Sabrina, a couple who both followed the techniques for managing fear-based spending, reported that money arguments decreased by nearly 80% within 3 months. We used to fight about surprise purchases at least weekly, Mark shared. Now we have a system for communicating about spending that actually works, because we understand what's driving our behaviors. Perhaps most significantly, mastering emotional spending creates an opportunity to break generational patterns. When you change your relationship with money, you model healthier behaviors for your children, nieces, nephews, or any young people in your life. Research shows that financial behaviors are largely formed through observation rather than instruction, meaning your transformed habits create a ripple effect that can impact generations to come. Imagine your child growing up watching you pause before purchases to check in with your emotions, rather than seeing shopping used as a way to manage feelings. They're learning invaluable emotional intelligence skills that most schools never teach. One viewer, Tasha, shared that her 9-year-old daughter now reminds her of their family's feeling or needing question before making purchases, a simple but powerful tool that distinguishes between emotional wants and genuine needs. The compound effect of mastering emotional triggers becomes truly remarkable when viewed over longer time horizons. Someone who redirects just $200 monthly from emotional spending to retirement savings starting at age 25 could accumulate an additional $450,000 by retirement age at 65, assuming average market returns. That's nearly $500,000 recovered from what would have been forgotten impulse purchases. What about the psychological and emotional dividends? People who successfully master their emotional spending triggers report significant improvements in overall life satisfaction. They describe feeling unburdened, in control, and present in ways that transcend just financial benefits. As one viewer put it, "I'm not just saving money, I'm saving mental energy that I used to waste on shopping regret." The transformation extends to career satisfaction, too. When spending is no longer driven by compensation for job dissatisfaction, people make career decisions based on genuine fulfillment rather than just salary considerations. Lauren, who conquered her stress spending habit, realized she was using shopping to compensate for a job she hated. Once she broke that connection, she felt empowered to transition to a role that paid slightly less but offered significantly more satisfaction. "I'm actually spending less and enjoying life more," she reported. The most surprising benefit many report is an improved sense of time affluence. When shopping is no longer your default activity for managing emotions, you discover hours of reclaimed time each week. Many viewers report using this newfound time for meaningful connections, creative pursuits, or health-enhancing activities, all of which further contribute to well-being without costing a dime. Think about your own potential transformation. If you typically make 3 emotional purchases weekly, averaging $45 each, that's about $7,000 annually. Redirecting even a quarter of that toward debt reduction, wealth building, or meaningful experiences could completely reshape your financial trajectory while simultaneously improving your emotional well-being. What's particularly powerful is that these benefits begin immediately. Unlike many financial strategies that require years to show results, the emotional relief of breaking unhealthy spending cycles can be felt within days or weeks. The financial results follow shortly after, creating a powerful reinforcement that helps sustain the new behaviors. As we wrap up today's journey through the emotional side of money, remember that your feelings aren't financial saboteurs. They're messengers with important information. When you feel that urge to stress shop or that FOMO-fueled panic, it's not a character flaw. It's your brain trying to meet a genuine need in the only way it knows how. The path to financial transformation isn't about suppressing these emotions, but becoming fluent in their language. Start small. Pick just one technique we covered today. Maybe it's the 24-hour cooling-off period or asking those 3 values alignment questions before checkout. Small changes create ripples that transform not just your bank account, but your entire relationship with money. I'd love to know which emotional spending trigger resonates most with you. Drop a comment below, telling me if you're more of a fear-based, validation-seeking, or stress shopper, and I'll share personalized strategies just for you. Your financial well-being journey starts with